You've been doing this as long as I have. If you're new to the program, welcome. These sessions are provided to help walk you through the forms necessary for the E-rate program. And today we will be tackling the 471, which is the second form in the process. My name is Mindy Fiscus, and I am the Director of Government Affairs for the Learning Technology Center. And looking at all of your names, I think we have all met. But for those of you who don't know my background, I used to serve as the Director of Southern Illinois when there were multiple LTCs across the state. I was in Area 6, which was Southern Illinois, the director for the last so many years. I've been here in the office since 1999. So when the reorganization of the LTC happened just a few years ago, I think it's 4, maybe 5, I moved into the role of state E-rate technology coordinator. So I've been your state coordinator for the last few years. There is a second coordinator. His name is Eric Grocky, and he is at the State Board of Education. Both of us have many years of experience with the program and can help you through the forms and answer your questions. Eric does all of our validation of student free and reduced lunch counts, and his email is on a couple slides further. So know that he's a resource as well. I am charged with doing hands-on support via trainings like this and also face-to-face Zoom meetings individually with people and presenting at conferences and things across the state. I also represent the state of Illinois in several different organizations, both state and national, many of them pertaining to broadband connectivity, which relates to E-rate. If you are not an avid taker of all of the supports the LTC can offer, please do reach out and check out our website at ltcillinois.org to learn a little bit more about the LTC. We actually have a lot of different focus areas we can help your districts with. And I know I interact with people for E-rate on an annual basis, but please know there are other people on our staff that can help with classroom integration, workshops and trainings at your district for IT. We have a STEM support specialist. We have a cybersecurity support specialist. We also even have coaches that go out into districts that we hire out to districts to spend X number of days in a district being coaches with your teachers. So lots of different services and supports that the LTC can offer. If you're here for E-rate, do check out those others on our website. And lastly, for my push on the LTC, we do have a community. That community is just we call it the LTC community, and you can see the link there in the middle of the screen. This is a place that's hopefully will benefit you connecting with our staff as well as your peers. And there is a group in the connectivity that is digital access and equity, where we talk about E-rate and like programs. So that is where I post all of my updates about deadlines and trainings and availability of things. So please do check that out. Over the last couple of years, it's been quite busy with other funding sources that we've had from stimulus funds like ECF and ACP that have related to E-rate and the other practices that I support. First and foremost, today we want to touch on the deadlines. So you had to have your 470 in by February 28th of 2023 in order to provide for that 28-day window that's required by the program to complete your Form 471 by March 28th. Hopefully all of you had your 470s in and are ready to go and file your 471 today. If by chance that you have filed that in the last 28 days, so you're within your window, there will come a point where you can no longer follow along with the 471 today, but please do stay tuned and watch what we're doing with the form. It will relate directly to your form when you are able to fill it out. If your form was completed prior to February 3rd, or wait, it's the 6th, February 6th, or 7th, you should be able to follow along with us today. So that's counting out that 28 days back for you. If there is something that you have forgotten on your 470 form as you get ready to move forward with the 471 today, please message me directly. There are a couple tricks up my sleeve for things that we can try to find on statewide contracts and other things that we might be able to leverage. No promises, but I can try to help you out of the pickle if you find yourself with one. We have had several workshops already this year, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we are recording these workshops, and I will be sending you a copy of today's recording. There are a couple of people that messaged me earlier today saying they were going to be late for today's recording, so obviously that would benefit them, and a couple of others that had something come up and weren't not able to join us. So anybody who is registered will get a copy of today's recording. In addition to that, I will be looking at all of these recordings that we have done on Friday and trying to pick a best of show, let's say, for the recordings and examples so that we can put those on our YouTube channel for the LTC. So we'll be gathering those together and trying to put those on our YouTube channel, hopefully within the next few days so that we have them for the rest of the window. There were some hosted in-person events, and that was a big change that we had this year. So, due to the pandemic, everything was virtual. We did have some ROEs that requested in-person events this year. So we did 4 of those. And I do have one of those events still in Mount Vernon, Illinois on Monday. So if you find yourself in the Mount Vernon area and you need a little bit more hands-on support, I will be there Monday morning in Mount Vernon. Again, we are filing the 471 today. So we filed our 470s to ask for services. Hopefully you all received some bids that you got back. We're able to decide which bid you want to move forward with, and we'll talk about rubrics here in a second, and are ready to file your 471 today. The 471 is the most in-depth of the forms of the program, and so we've set aside several hours to help today. Some of you might find it to be very straightforward. Maybe you're continuing a contract. Maybe you only have 1 or 2 things that you're getting, and you might not need all the hours set aside for today. Most of these sessions have been running a couple of hours with another hour of questions and answers and support on the back end. I will stick around as long as you need me to today. So there's nothing on my calendar after this session. Again, we're starting at 12, and I think we dedicated 12 to 4. Should be more than enough time to get everything done. But I will be here and do a couple of live demos with you all together. If you are filing for something and you get what you need out of our sessions and we move on to the next category that we're filing for, and you want to jump out of the session, you will not hurt my feelings. So these sessions are here to support you. Today's form will require some details. So we will want to say in this form what you're purchasing, the specific brand and model, how much you're spending for that item, and who you're purchasing it from. So if you don't have those details worked out today, again, follow along and watch what we're doing. And once you have those decisions made, you can use our videos as a guide to move forward. At the end of today, you will be submitting your form, hopefully, and have it ready for PIA review. That is the next step in the process. So you will be assigned a reviewer who will look at your form. In some cases, they look at those forms and they don't find any problems and they just send them on down the line for approval. In other cases, they give you a call and they ask for documentation to support your form. So know that there is another step after the 471 that will take place. If you get questions and they're speaking E-rate Greek and you need somebody to translate, that is what I'm here for. Eric Grocki is willing to help too in those translations. The biggest request that we're seeing so far this year is for people to provide third-party verification of their free and reduced lunch rates. That is fancy E-rate speak for you need a letter from Eric Grocki. So know that moving forward, if you get that request for third-party verification, we are here to help. And what really does meet that requirement is an email letter from Eric Grocki. After today's form and the evaluation, there are some other forms here to note. We don't usually have full workshops like this, but I am considering doing 1 or 2, not 6 like we do for the bigger forms, but 1 or 2 either recorded workshops, webinars, or something for filing the 486. Typically, we do that in August or September. And then again, for invoicing, if you want to get the invoices yourself and file a bear form, that's a 472. You pay the whole bill, and then you get reimbursed for your USAC eligible portion. Or you can choose to do the SPY method, which is the 474. Please communicate with your vendor. That way you just pay your non-discounted shares. So if you're an 80% district, you would pay 20% of the bill, and then the company would ask USAC for the reimbursement. So those are the other forms that will be filed after this one. Again, if you get that request for third-party verification, you're going to want to reach out to Eric Grocki, and let me copy his email address and throw it in the chat. There you go. You're going to want to reach out to Eric Grocki and ask him for that letter. If you get in your review and you're in the middle of it and it's 3 months from now and you can't remember what Eric's email or name is, you can always reach out to me and I'll connect you with him. But that is the need that is met through his paperwork for PIA review for third-party verification. After your review takes place, you will receive a funding commitment decision letter, or what some people refer to as an FCDL in the acronyms. They come with 2 attachments in your email. So there'll be a letter that's like a form letter that says, hey, great news, you were funded. And there's another spreadsheet that has like, it's a spreadsheet, a CSV file that has all the things that you asked for and how much you were funded for. Please do look at both of those attachments, even if you got 0 money. So even if they gave you $0 on all of your requests, that first letter says, congratulations, you were funded. So that's a little bit misleading. We had some people last year who had some things funded, but other things zeroed out. We believe that to have been a mistake, but we didn't realize it because they thought they were funded and they just kind of filed it away and said, hey, I'll file that 486 later. We do want to look at those right away. There is not an infinite amount of time to ask them to reconsider. So if you get something back that says 0 and you think that that is an error, reach out to me. I believe it is 60 days where we can go back to them and say, I want you to reconsider and take another look at this. Maybe we can provide additional documentation to get those things funded. So please do look at that, both attachments, especially that spreadsheet, and see and make sure that all of your funding was committed when you get that funding commitment decision letter. Typically that comes anywhere between May and October. We've seen in previous years a few early and we've seen some a few late. So, but know that that's sometimes hits right in the middle of the summer. So it's easy to just kind of be excited about and move on. Also, you will have to file that 486 confirmation form. It's what I call the thank you letter of the program. Once you get that funding commitment decision letter, you have 120 days after that letter or after the start of service to file that, which means it is due in the end of October. This is the only form in the system, the 486, where they send you a reminder if you forget. Everything else has hard deadlines. So if you have forgotten that form, you will see something the end of October that says, it looks like you forgot your 486. You have 15 more days to file it. Everything else in the system, you don't get a reminder, they're not as forgiving. So do try to take a look at that 486 once you've gotten that funding commitment decision letter, get it off your plate and don't worry about it anymore. Do we have any questions so far in the chat? I'll give it a good teacher's pause and we'll move forward. All right, it looks like we've got a decent group of 14 or 15 people at this point. So hopefully all of you have joined on. In the chat, there is a sign-in. I'm going to just repost that sign-in sheet so I can get you guys to do click on that bit.ly and sign in for me. This is how I'm keeping track of who is here at the workshop today and trying to get you guys some PD credit for attendance. So I posted that back in the chat. We do have in our state of Illinois a broadband network consortium that is put on by our Illinois Century Network, which is our state network. There is a link at the top of this page. It is illinois.gov/K12 broadband. That will take you directly to the consortium page. If you are signed up for the consortium as an option and they bid out for you this year, you should have received an email in the last couple of weeks telling you who your chosen provider is from the consortium. It's also asking you to either commit to the consortium or decline. So if you are looking at the consortium and it's something that you want to do, please do reply back and say that you want to commit to their offer. If that's something you've decided not to do at this time, please do click decline so that people don't have to chase you down and find out what your intentions are. So I do want you to reply to them one way or the other. If you are moving forward with the consortium, it is best practice to file a 471 for month-to-month services. That is ongoing transitional services for your school. The reason that we are encouraging you to do that is because if there is any delay in the transition of you switching over to the consortium, which is all hopefully going to be done by July 1st, but if they don't get you switched over until August 1st or September 1st, I don't want you to have to pick up the entire cost of your ongoing internet until that's ready to go. If we file a 471 for month-to-month support for that current connection and you don't get it turned on by July 1st, you will then be able to collect E-rate on that existing connection for those months. In a perfect world, everything will be up and going and ready to go July 1st, and it won't be a problem. But we just had a handful of districts last year that did have a delay in their install, and I don't want that to happen to anyone else to where they have to pay the whole bill out of pocket while waiting. So please do go ahead and file a 471 with month-to-month service, and we'll try to do that in our examples today so that you can see what that looks like. Also, you're going to want to communicate with your existing provider. So many of the people that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks, sometimes it's their current provider that is the new consortium provider, but there is a change there. So instead of getting internet that's purchased off of the regular purchasing spectrum for your provider, they're going to be just routing you back to the Illinois Century network. Some of the providers have said that unbundles. So like, I know if you get your like cable and phones and everything bundled together at home, it's similar for a school district. So they run it on their purchased internet. And some of the providers, not all, have said if you're going to go with the network consortium, they still want to run the phone lines on their own internet. So that might cause an increase of cost for your phone lines. You also want to make sure that if there's any delay, that provider is still aware of what your intentions are so that they can not cut you off. And keep your service going until that transition takes place. So please do communicate with your existing providers as well as the consortium. I'm going to give it a minute. Do we have anybody in the group today that wants to discuss your options or what that looks like with the consortium? I find those conversations really do benefit the greater good.
Mindy, it's
Yes.
Amanda.
Okay.
Hi. I wanted to join again today. I was there in Charleston at the ROE, but so we did accept the bid for 3 of the 4 buildings.
Okay.
In our district. I did talk to Consolidated. They were the winning bidder through the consortium, and that's our current provider also for the 3 buildings. I guess my question is, if I fill out a 471 for internet services, are they going to be able to fill out a 471 for with the same start date?
Excellent question. So what we're going to do when we do our example today is we're going to do a 471 for month-to-month services for those 3 buildings, and we are going to name it transitional services. So that transitional services term, some people also call it bridge services. I think if you talk to the consortium leads, that's what they call it. Those are terms that USAC understands as I'm transitioning from one to another. So they will take a look at it and see yours are just a plan B or for the transition to take place. And then the consortium ones will kick in at that point. They may come back to you in your review and say, what do you want your transitional date to be? You know, like, what do you think that is going to be? Most of the time they encourage school districts to do that at the 6-month mark. So then that way you're able to file it one way or another. I'm hoping you won't have to use it at all. But I definitely would do transitional services month to month. We're going to put in a whole year and maybe they'll approve the whole year. If you won't claim it once you no longer have a bill for it. So once that transition does take place, it doesn't prohibit either of you asking for the service, but they're going to want a clean cut on the back end. So they may reach out to you at some point and say, let's just say there was a delay of 2 months. They might say, hey, you had transitional service from your existing provider for July and August. It's September 1st, and we're showing that the ICN is billing for you. Will you fill out this form to say your end of service was September 30th or something? Sometimes they come back and ask you to close that end loop, and sometimes they don't, but they're not going to fund both at the same time. So they're going to come back out to the consortium and say, hey, the school district claims service until this point. This is when you get to start claiming yours.
Okay, sounds good.
Again, if you got, no problem. If you are not participating in the consortium thus far, but you're interested, I would encourage you to fill out that paperwork. There's an LOA, which allows them to apply on your behalf, and circuit information. I would fill that out as soon as possible. They kind of go through their list each year early. So like July or August, and say who is expiring. In this case, it will be June 30th of 2024 next year. And they put the list together and they get their 470 filed rather quickly. That's just because it takes a long time for procurement in the state of Illinois. So they're trying to get a lead on it. So if that is something that you're interested in the future, but you're currently in a contract till 2024, 2025, or after, please do fill out those forms early. If it is something, like I said, that you're choosing not to go with the consortium for one reason or another, and everybody has a different opinion on that, that is okay. There's no need to compare like the cost. Actually, I don't think they even give you the cost. So there's no need to compare the cost that the ICN got with yours and a rubric or anything like that. You are welcome to just say no, thank you, and move forward with your own 471 and your own 470 process and a contract you've signed from that. So just let me know if you have any more questions. Again, pretty quiet group, nothing in the chat. Amanda can talk on microphone. You guys can too. Just putting this bid evaluation sheet up there. I do get a lot of emails this time of year saying, hey, I got multiple bids for my products and services. I want to have the documentation on hand, but we kind of evaluated and we know who we're going to go with. This is an example bid evaluation. It's kind of geared towards category 2, but it can work for either category. In this case, the school district has 3 bids. The bids first have to take into account cost. So cost has got to be the highest factor. That's the only evaluation component required within E-rate. So if you did an evaluation of the top 3 bids and you looked at cost and you wanted to only look at cost, you would have awarded to bid A, obviously, because it has more points than the other 2 when it comes to cost. If you want to take other things into consideration, you can do so. So the examples that I see most frequently are ineligible components. So the provider gave you a bid that did not match what you asked for. Say you asked for Aruba and you got a Cisco bid. You can see here in my bid evaluation, there were 10 points for that. If they gave me exactly what I wanted. So I wanted Aruba, they gave me Aruba. Bid B got 10 full points for that. Bid A got 5 points, meaning some of the products would work and interchange easily with the equipment that I have. And bid C is 0 points because they gave me a totally off brand. I wanted Aruba, they gave me Cisco. Those systems don't really work together. It's not a feasible bid for me. So they got 0 points. So that's kind of the example for ineligible components. Again, that ineligible components category could be all the way up to 49 points and still be under the 50. So as long as cost is higher than everything else, that's great. In addition, cost could have been at 21 points in this rubric, and that would have been okay because it's still the highest category. Many people then also leverage experience with their vendor and local provider. That allows you to pick somebody that maybe is a little bit higher in price comparison, but is somebody that you're comfortable working with and have worked with in the past. And so you can kind of see here, if we just went by cost, bid A would have been our winner, but factoring everything in, bid B is our clear winner here. So we have the ability to kind of work with our bid evaluations and select the best provider for your district. If you need some help with bid evaluations, let me know. You are required to do a bid evaluation anytime that you have more than one bid that came in as a result of your 470. I will show you where to note how many bids come in from the 470 in our contract module moving forward. And if you say more than one, so if you say 2 or 3 bids came in, again, they're going to expect you to have some sort of bid evaluation like this on file if they ask for it. There is nowhere to upload or provide this bid evaluation until they ask you for it. They don't always ask for it, but sometimes they do. And so you want to have it ready to go. In addition, this bid evaluation is supposed to be done before filing your 471. So if you're filing today and you have not done the bid evaluation, you're going to want to go ahead and date your bid evaluation as today. If you've done your bid evaluation 2 weeks ago, you can go ahead and use that date. It just can't be done after you filed the 471 because the 471 is actually asking for the winning bid. So It also has to be at least 28 days after your 470. Again, you can have this in any format. Just happens to be on my slide deck. You can have it in a Word document. You can draw it out on a piece of paper and scan it in. I had a school district do it on a napkin at a pizza place, and scanned it in and took a picture of it, and that was still acceptable. They just wanted to show evidence that you did do that evaluation and when. For those of you who are asking for Category 2 equipment, there is a budget for Category 2. It is pre-discount. So that budget is figured before your 70 or 80% off. It is a pre-discount budget. So if you go through the tool here at the bottom, and we did a demo in our 470, so you can check that out on YouTube if you want. But if you go through the demo tool and you find that you have $100,000 available for your district and you are an 80% district, that means that you can spend up to $100,000, but you'll have to cover $20,000 of that cost. So please know that this is a pre-discount budget. You can spend more than the budget, but it is likely in PIA review that they're going to have you scale that back and indicate which items are going to be taken out of your E-rate budget. Again, we did a demo with the 470. Those videos are on our YouTube channel, and I've tried to line out the YouTube channel videos with timestamps so you can go right to the Category 2 budget tool if you need to see a demo of that. Really important in E-rate is the vendor relations that you have at this point. So again, we have to wait 28 days before picking a winning bidder. You want to get a contract or a signed bid. Make sure that you are aware that both parties are moving forward with the purchase. Many people get excited and are ready to file their 471 once they've gotten the bids and decided, but you really do need to cycle back with your vendor that you've chosen and make sure there's not any documentation or paperwork that you have to sign for them. For example, in years past, CDW did not have a signature page or anything. They just asked that you let them know that you're moving forward with their bid. Now they do have a signature page in place. So if you're choosing a bid today that is from CDW and that's where you want to move forward, do not be surprised if you reach out to them via email and say, we've chosen your bid and we want to move forward with this. If they don't send something back to you in the form of a small contract to sign, that allows them to have the leverage to document his E-rate on their end, as well as hold pricing for you to some extent, since it's E-rate funded. Many of the providers are now going to that method and want to have a signature page. Other providers might just say, hey, date and, initial and date the bid that you have, send it to us, we'll initial and date it, scan it and send it back to you. But USEC really does like it when they see that both parties are on the same page, and an initial or a signature does help them to see that. If today you have a bid without signatures and you want to move forward with that, that is fine. You're going to want to use today's date for the signatures though, as you go and seek those signatures out. Again, communicate with your vendors. It is really nice and politically correct to contact even the vendors that did not win your bids and say something like, hey, thank you for your bids. Your bid was not chosen in our rubric for this year's E-rate process, but we'll keep you in mind in the future. Definitely nice to let the people know who didn't win as well as the ones who did. And again, cover your bases. So just kind of make sure if you're doing the consortium in particular, that you have some transitional service in place, that you've communicated with your current provider, that they're aware that you are ending your contract when you transition to the consortium. Many of those contracts for internet access have a clause that says if we're not told in 90 days or whatever, then you automatically renew. And I just don't want to see anybody tied into a year-long contract when their intention is to move over to a different provider. Tips and tricks for our 471, and then we'll jump right into the demos today. You're going to file different 471s for different categories. So we don't, on our 470, we were able to put our internet and our stuff all in the same form. You can't do that at the 471. So they're two separate forms. We're going to do an example for a 471 for category 1. Then we're going to do an example for 471 for category 2. Many of the screens and slides are the same on those forms. The certifications are exactly the same. So as we finish our 471 for Cat 1 today and you hear what all those certifications are, please know as you're moving forward with your 471 for Cat 2, if you have 2 items to enter and our example is 5, you are welcome to move forward and do those same certifications on the second form. Also, any kind of approved bids or agreements or anything like that, that is considered a contract for E-rate. So you don't necessarily have to have a written and signed contract back and forth that was approved by your board. Like, that's not an E-rate requirement. If you choose to go ahead and do that after filing today, that's fine. All USAC is asking for is something that shows what you're purchasing at what amounts and how you're moving forward. As a matter of fact, USAC doesn't even require you to attach a document. There is a place to attach a document. I encourage you to do so, but if you're not prepared to do that today, that's okay. We can just enter the information and they will follow back up with you in PIA review for those documents. So they are calling everything contracts, and we're going to actually enter our contracts first and then move forward. For those of you who are old school with me, what was item 21 attachments that we filed after our 471, we're now doing ahead of time and we're calling them contracts. So we're going to do that prep work first and then attach it to a 471. Again, that's what I have there. If you have a signed document, that's great. We can attach it and move forward. If you don't have an assigned document, that's okay. But you are going to want to get that because you'll be asked for it in PIA review. New FRNs are needed for each provider. So if you are purchasing 5 items, the first 3 are coming from CDW and the last 2 are coming from HART, which is another provider in our state. You're going to want to do a separate funding request for each one of those providers. Sometimes we even have where you get products and services from a provider, and then you're getting support or managed broadband services. And those are 2 other things that are eligible for category 2. Those would need to be separate FRNs as well. Even if it's on the same quote or contract that you got, you know, you're getting these 3 items and you're also getting support on those items or managed services for your whole district to manage your network for you. Those things can be on the same paperwork, but they do have to be in separate funding requests because the funding requests are for one subtype. So you'll have one funding request for stuff, another funding request for basic maintenance, a different funding request for managed broadband services, if that's what you're interested in. Some of you will find on your internet access contracts that you have one provider that serves all of your buildings, but each one of those buildings has a different cost amount. So maybe you're getting 1 gigabit to one place and 250 megabits to another. If there are different costs for the different connections, I would encourage you to list them all as separate lines separately. In addition to that, if you have the situation as we were talking about with the consortium where some of your buildings are covered by one provider and you have another rural building that's covered by a different provider, that of course needs to be a separate FRN. And hopefully this will make a heck of a lot more sense when you're seeing it in person here in a minute. Also, the FRN charts for the funding requests and the FRN line item charts look a lot alike. And so people kind of get confused on which chart they're in. Know that that is normal. And I will try to designate and make it clear to you guys which chart we're in and what we're doing when we're in this form. I would love it if those 2 charts look differently so you could tell which level of the form that you are in, but they do look remarkably the same. Okay, so if you, again, reading the chat, if you have questions about bid evaluation or questions about contract creation, etc., please don't hesitate to ask. You can ask in real time while we're here in the session, or you can reach out to me later, and that's fine too. I just want to make sure you have all the documentation that you need to answer PIA review questions. And even if you get a question in PIA review and you think, I need somebody to translate that for me, or I gave them this and they're saying that's not what they want, please know that I'm here to help in those situations, and you can reach out to me and I'll help walk you through the process. Many times it's just like you get a list of questions and you're like, this first one pertains to me, but the rest of these don't. And you just want me to tell you that, yes, you're right. The rest of those questions don't pertain to you. And that's totally okay. That's what I'm here for. I just wrote out here how to put a contract in EPC. I just wanted you to have a step-by-step on a slide. We're going to walk through this together, but I find that people kind of want to come back in later and file another form. And they were like, how do I do that contract creation for contracts? So I put a slide together just to kind of give you the step-by-step here in the slide deck. Also, this is a good time for me to say, here is the link to the slide deck. If you need it, you can come to the slide deck and get these slides and these step-by-steps. So I put that in the chat for you guys. come back and click on, and I'm ready to jump on into the demonstration. So as I said, before I get into the USAC, I will come back to these slides in a minute. We'll make sure we answer any questions that you have. You can find all the resources for E-rate on our website at 4ltc.org/E-rate. That's just a shortcut. And I will make sure after each example that we do take the time to answer questions, etc. So we're going to jump in. If you're following along on another screen or in another tab, you're just going to go to portal.usac.org or usac.org. And let me make this bigger for everyone. And click sign in. So portal.usac.org or sign in from the USAC site. And I am going to sign in today with a password given to me by Hudsonville School District. So thank you to Hudsonville School District for giving us a login to their system today so that we can give you a real live example. There is a training site available from USAC, but I find that it doesn't always have all of the details that you guys see on your end. And so I really appreciate Hudsonville for sharing access with me in order to give you guys a live example. I'm going to click on text message on mine. You may just have email. And then you want to make sure you keep clicking until you see that green check mark there that says I've sent you a code. And then you're going to want to check your email in another tab or check your phone if you sent it to your phone. And it looks like the code that was sent to me is right here. So you're going to get that code. If sometimes it sends two right in a row, so you're going to want to use the most recent, if that's the case. And hopefully everybody's getting those codes and can sign in. If you have not been into the system for a while, it may make you get a new password. Does that every, I think it is 75 days, but I'm not positive on that. So you might have to put in a new password there. And at any time, if you're logging in and it's telling you have the incorrect password, if you try to do that 5 times, it will kick you out for like 12 hours. So I encourage you to try a couple of times. And if that password's not working, there is a reset or forgot password link, and that will allow you to reset your password via email and get into the system right away. Hopefully nobody's been kicked out today. Once you get into the dashboard, it is going to show 3 squares that are really light gray and maybe don't even look like squares on your screen, depending on your screen share. Most people see 3, EPC, which is what we're going to be using today, ECF, which is a stimulus funding source that we've seen and used the last couple of years. And some of you have BEAR, which is the invoicing in the system. So you're going to be choosing today the first option, which is E-Rate Productivity Center. And as I hover over the text, it turns to a link. And we're going to take that into what we are traditionally seeing as our landing page. So again, if you're catching up, you're going to log into the system, have it send you the code, collect your code via email and put it back in. And then you're going to choose EPC from the 3 options to be here with us. Does anybody need another minute moving forward? Unmute and yell at me. Or say, hold on in the chat. Not seeing any little hands or anything in the Zoom feature, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So here from our main applicant landing page, just a little bit of navigation of this system. If at any point you find yourself not on this landing page, but you want to get back there with me, it is under reports at the blue bar at the top and my applicant landing page. So that should take you back here. Also a little known trick, anytime you see a logo and you click on it, it will take you back to this landing page. The one thing that I really do like about this system is that it doesn't delete anything. So if you are in the middle of a form, if you start a form today with me and you get kicked off for some reason, somebody comes in and needs your attention and you're drawn away, it will save it under tasks for you. So in the blue bar at the top, it will save right where you are in your tasks. If you've started any forms, just kind of clicking around or looking around, you might see tasks that are already here listed as create a form 470 or create a form 471. It does save everything for you in real time. So if there's anything that you're doing today that you want to come back and finish it up tomorrow or the next day, it will be here in the tasks. In addition, if there's anything, especially for those of you who are new and have taken over for someone else, if there is anything that you want to get a copy of from previous years, if you scroll down to the bottom, there is, in the system, you will find everything after 2016. So you could go and say, I want to look at last year's 471. So you choose 471 from funding year 22. They did not do one last year, so I'm going to try 21. And it will show you previous 471s that you have filed. So if you want to take a look at those as a guide, you can do that, but it will allow you to go back and see 471s from previous year. In order to see the form, you're just going to click on the application number. And then at the very bottom of the page, you can download a current PDF copy. So you can take a look at what those forms look like in the past. Again, I'm on a different page of the thing, and I want to get back to the landing page. It's reports and landing page. So the first thing that we are going to do today is create a contract record. So I like to create all of our contract records and then attach them to 471s. Everything that you are doing is a contract. So if you have a bid for stuff, that is a contract. If you have an ongoing internet access, you might not have to enter the contract because you entered it last year when the services started, but you're going to end up attaching the contract when you get into the form. So you'll attach last year's contract. If you have new internet access, you have a contract. So any kind of agreement that moving forward with a purchase is a contract for USAC terms. In order to access and add contracts, you click on the school district. And again, this was on this, this slide deck right here, the step-by-step. You're going to click on the school district name, either right here underneath the logo with the exclamation mark after it, welcoming you, or down here in the entities, and make sure you choose the school district. And it's going to take you to the district status page. From the district status page, you're going to want to scroll over about 2/3 of the way over to contracts. So again, from the landing page, district and contracts. And then from here, you're going to choose manage contracts in the upper right. And if you're in the Zoom with us today, you might have to move my little talking face in order to see the manage contracts. When you click on manage contracts, it is going to show you any draft contracts that you have in the works, and also give you the option and/or, because you might not have any drafts, the ability to add a new contract. If you have a contract that you were working on before that you no longer want here, you can easily delete that. You can also easily edit it and go back into where you were and add to the contract. The trick with this system is a contract has to be submitted. It can no longer be in draft in order to link it to your 471. So anything that is in here can be in process. You just can't move forward on your 471 until it is submitted in the system. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that previous example that I did. I've already got lots of examples here. And I'm going to start a new one with you guys. So we're going to click on add a new contract, the blue button. And the first thing they want you to do is name it. So I'm going to say FY23-24. That just helps me understand which year this is for and to find the correct contract in the name. And I'm going to say CAT to equipment. And if you know from who, you could say from, I think that there is a contract in here from Charlie Inc., who is a local provider for Hudsonville. So if you're doing your purchasing from CDW on this one, you could say CDW. Again, if you're getting some of your products from one provider, some of your products from another, you'll have to be entered as separate contracts. If you have a contract number, you can enter it, but that is not required. So I'm just going to click on save and continue and move forward. At this section, if you have a copy of your contract that you want to provide to them, now is the opportunity to do that. You would click yes here, and then it gives you the option to upload. If you do not have a copy of your contract right now, that is okay. If you don't want to attach it moving forward, you will be asked for it in PIA review. So you're going to want to get those signatures, going to want to get that detailed out. Somebody in one of our previous sessions said, hey, I got a bid from this provider. They listed off 5 things. I then took a look at my budget and realized we can only afford to move forward with 4 of them. So he was like, I think I'm going to go back and get a new clean bid that only has the 4 on it instead of the 5. I think that's an excellent idea. He did not attach here. Sorry about that. He did not attach a contract because he wanted to make a change to it. So he moved forward and put everything in. The pricing still stayed the same for those other 4 items and everything was entered, but he'll have that new clean contract with only those 4 items by the time they ask for it in PIA review. So you're welcome to do that. If you do have something ready to go and you want to upload it here, sometimes that saves you a step in PIA review. So if the reviewer can take a look at your request, can take a look at the contract, can match them up easily and see what you're asking for, and they match, you might not get a call. You might not get a question. They may just go ahead and send you forward for the next step in the review and approval. So it does save you some time and energy. If you do want to upload, you can just click upload there and attach something. And then you do have to enter something over here and describe this document. So you can just say, you know, contract with Charlie Inc. or whatever for my example. I'm going to say no on my example and move forward. We're going to click save and continue. And then there's a few questions that it asks that pertain to things that we do in our states. And keep in mind, this is a federal program that meets the needs of all 50 states. In our state, we don't usually leverage state master contracts and multiple award schedules. States like West Virginia do. They appreciate those opportunities. We haven't really leveraged a lot of that here in our state of Illinois. So that's going to be both no for the state master contracts. Maybe we'll do some in the future. And also, we don't do any piggybacking or anything off of our contracts. So that would be an example, like a large school district could go out to bid, and as part of their contract, they could say, I allow all the other school districts in Illinois to piggyback off of this. And then we would be able to leverage that piggybacking, but it's not something I've seen used in our state before. So again, no, 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 no. And then we're going to move here to the 470. So it says, was a 470 posted? And yes, of course it was. We always want to post a 470 out and ask for our services. And here is that box that I mentioned where it said how many bids were received. So if I indicate 3 bids were received here, they're going to expect that I have that rubric somewhere here in my files and can provide it to them if they ask for it. If you honestly just received 1 bid from 1 provider, so you were wanting switches, you sent it out, 1 provider got back to you and said, hey, here's some switches, then that's the one you're using, do put down the 1. I would just remind you that if that's the case and you have only 1 provider, please, like Amazon, check it. Just like go online and look and see what the going rate for that particular switch or item is. We did have a couple of school districts last year who only got 1 bid and moved forward with it, but they were like twice the list cost of what other people were paying. And that was, of course, denied in the PIA review process. Just don't want to find anyone else in that situation. So in most cases, we have 2 or 3 bids, indicating we have a rubric. Over here, it says, was that 470 posted prior to 2016? Most of the time, the answer is no. If you find yourself in that situation, that's just asking because 2016 and forward are in the system. Anything before 2016 would mean they need to go to the archive system and find it. And then down here under search for the 470, it wants you to identify which 470 works with this contract. So maybe I filed a couple of them, 1 for internet access and 1 for category 2. The bin number for your district is already entered. So all you really have to do is click on search and then find it in the chart. If you do have that particular 470 number, you can go ahead and list it here. Or if you always nickname something with FY23 or FY22, you could find it by nickname as well. I'm going to come down here and say, hey, I'm looking for internal connections, which is over here on the right, for FY23. So there was 1 filed this year. Going to select that as my 470 that was filed for Cat 2 this year. We're going to click Save and Continue. Again, if I am going too fast or you're a couple slides back or something, please do not hesitate to stop me. My husband likes to say I'm the fastest talking person in Southern Illinois. when we do get to the service provider page, it now wants to say, so we've already answered the questions. Here's my contract. I filed a 470 and which one? We're now at the step that says, this is the service provider that I'm going forward with. Again, in my example, I'm going to go with Charlie Inc. I'm going to put INC period and see if that works. And I'm going to click on search. Again, I don't see anything here when I do that. If I remove the Inc., I think I can find Charlie and see, there it is, Charlie Inc. with a comma. That's why I didn't like it. If you enter your search name over here and you can't find it, sometimes removing the incorporated or removing the, like CDWG might not show up, but CDW would, kind of thing. If your bid has the spin number on the bid, so many people give you a bid that has like the front page that says, this is the company and this is our spin number, by all means, type in the spin number and search by spin number. Just some examples of what we see here. If you're filing for like category 1, many of the companies that operate, the name they operate under is not their owner name. I don't know how to say that in a better way. The parent company for Clearwave, for example, is Delta Communication. So you're going to see that as Delta. Mediacom operates under MCC. So the initials of Mediacom Corporation. So there are some like acronyms and company names that don't look like they match up. If you have any questions about which company that is, my first suggestion is to kind of look for the state of Illinois. But some of our companies are national, so you kind of want to look there. If you're worried about it at all, you can go back to the company and ask them, what is your spin number specifically, and enter it. There's also a way to fix it on the back end. So if you put in one that I've seen, Metro Communication in the state of Illinois is also an MCC LC or something like that. People have chosen, there is a company called Metro. Let's just do that as an example. There is a company called Metro out of, Metro Communications Company, or MCC Inc. is what they file under. I think they usually file under initials. But like say you did Metro Computer Solutions and accidentally chose the wrong one here, you can go ahead and fix that on the back end with a different form or during PIA review. So it's not the end of the world if you choose the wrong one. But I really think that Metro operates under Metro Communications Company, as does Mediacom. So MCC Illinois is Mediacom, and MCC Network Services is Metro. Fun times. Once you've chosen your provider, you're just going to click Save and Continue once it's in the chart. Oh, sorry. Click the box in front of it and say Save and Continue. And then it says, is this a multiple year contract? So if you're entering a contract for internet access for multiple years, you would say yes. If it is just buying things for this year, you would say, no, I'm just purchasing for this year. And what is the date that you awarded your contract? So you're going to want to go back and see when that rubric was done. If it was done today, today is an okay date. If I try to choose something that was before my 28 days was up, just trying to give you an example, it will tell you, it will give you a warning here that says you have to wait 28 days before you can choose that contract. If I try to choose something that is after today, so let's go back to March of 2023. It will not let me in. It will error out and say that you can't choose a date in the future. So it does try to kind of watch and make sure you're not making any mistakes. Again, not seeing any questions or anything in the chat. I'm going to continue moving forward. Does this contract have voluntary extensions? Typically for a Cat 2, we don't see that. Sometimes in Category 1 contracts, you get like 3 years of internet access with 2 more years of extensions. If you do see that in your contract terms, it will then say, okay, what if you leveraged those 2 years of extensions? What is, what's the last date if they're all exercised? If that is not written out in your contract and you just simply see, hey, this is a 3-year contract, you would just say, no, it does not include voluntary extensions. And then lastly, it asks, is there some kind of pricing confidentiality in play? There is nothing that I'm aware of in the state of Illinois that does that pricing confidentiality. We did have a couple of school districts a few years ago that put yes down because there was something in their contract that said something about pricing confidentiality that was overridden, and they were told that doesn't pertain. So if you say yes, it's going to come up and say, like, what court case gave you the reason that you don't have to share it. So basically they're forcing everyone to be publicly visible on their contracts and their amounts. That's in an effort to keep everybody up and giving the best price to all school districts, not just the large ones. Click save and continue, and it does give us now all of the information on one page. So we have all of our contract information, 470 information, service provider information, service dates, etc., all on one page. And in order to attach it to your contract, you're going to want to click complete. I'm going to go back to the very beginning and call mine practice so that Julie doesn't accidentally attach this to hers. And then we'll have a FY23 practice contract to use. So hold on a second as I get back to the back, and you guys can go ahead and go to the front and submit yours. Again, if you make any changes, you have to come back through all the pages. I just didn't want them to accidentally use mine as their real one instead of an example. And complete. Again, if you don't click complete, you can't attach it to a 471. So it is straight up 1 o'clock. I know some of you have multiple contracts to enter, so we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to pause the recording. We're going to give you guys 10 minutes to use the restroom, get those other contracts entered, grab a soda or something, and we'll come back and cycle back here at 1:10, and then we'll do a 471 and attach a contract to it. So take the next 10 minutes to get what you need done, and I will see you at 1:10. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you have all of your contracts entered. On this main contract page, you're going to see all of the contracts that have been submitted. So any of these that are in this list on my page can be attached to a 471. If you do not see the one that you've just entered, it's likely that you did not submit it. So you would go back to your managed contracts. And if it's in this list as a draft, you do have to complete it before you can attach it to a form. So once you have your contracts entered, we're going to go to reports and the My Applicant landing page. And we're going to be back here at the main page. And to access our 471, we're going to click on the blue link here in the upper right-hand corner of the page. For our examples today, we are going to do a 471 first for category 1. I will show you where the screens kind of start to look a little bit differently, so you'll know where that is. If you do not need to file for category 1 today, you are using the consortium or you are paying for internet without E-rate support, that's great. Bear with us and we'll be at the example for category 2 before you know it. If you are in the middle of a contract, so if you are in a multiple year contract, you signed your contract last year or the year before, that's great. You don't have to enter a new contract in the form that we just did, but you are going to cite that previous year contract. In the 471, there is also what I like to call an easy button, a copy FRN feature. So if you want to, you can use the funding request number from last year's form or the originating form in order to continue your service. Again, you do have to file a 471 every year, even if you were in the middle of the contract. Multiple year contracts save you from the 470, but not from the 471. So you do want to do one for continued service. In this first example, I'll also do month-to-month transitional services for those of you who need it. So I'm going to click on 471 from the upper right-hand corner. And the first thing it wants you to do is name your form. So most people do an FY23. I like to do 23-24, just because it tells me which school year it is. Fiscal years for ISB and funding years for E-rate have different naming infrastructure. So I like to put the dash in there so it's just really clear when I win the lottery and take off what year that was for. And then I'm going to say this example is example or cat 1 internet from and we'll do a MediaCom here for our example. I'm just going to say internet. I'm not going to say from who because I can't remember who they use. But so you're just going to want to go ahead and name it. Again, if you're filing a couple different ones today, one for category 1 or one for category 2 or multiples for category 2, you could name one switches. And then if you're doing category 2, basic managed services or something, you could do that as well. So put that all in the name so it's easy to find. What you're going to find at this point is it is now taken your nickname and put it up here. So it is now here and assigned you a number. So in USAC terms, they are going to refer to this form as 231019507. But having a name that actually means something to you is helpful in keeping track of what's what. Are you the main contact person? Yes, congrats, you are. If you find consultant information here, that likely means either you're using a consultant for your filing for one or more portions of your plan or you have in the past. That's totally okay. I think we have at least a couple of people here with us today who have either used a consultant in the past or are still using a consultant and just kind of want to better understand what they're paying somebody for, and that's totally great. So you're the main contact person. Go ahead and say, yes, I am. If you are one of our lucky individuals who knows that they're retiring and somebody else will be coming into your spot, you can go ahead and put that person's contact information here if you know who they are. Other people might put in like the secretary's, the district secretary's name and phone number, etc. If you know that you will no longer be at the district, it's nice to have some other contact information for when you leave, if you currently have that available. I'm going to click save and continue. I suppose you could do it for the summer as well. Most of our people filing E-rate now are accessible at least by email 12 months of the year. Again, our first example is going to be category 1. So I'm going to click on that category 1 button. This is where we begin to choose your own adventure. So if you don't have category 1 with us today and you use category 2, it's going to look a little different for the next few slides. So category 1. Save and continue. It's now going to give us information on the school. So this first page gives you a district overall student count. The next page gives you each building in your district and their student count and free and reduced lunch rates, followed by the free and reduced lunch discount level. So this particular district example is an 80% district. For those of you who see 90% in category 1 and 85 in category 2, that is normal. 85 is the most you can get for category 2. So it does list that out for you. If you see major concerns here, like you have 1,500 students and it says you have 350, like the school district, it's not something that you can change right here. You're going to have to put a phone call in to make the change for you. If you see something dramatically different and an error here, there's not something that you have access to change. We do update these totals each year during our 470 process, and there should be ways to change it in PIA review in the future. As you move forward, but you can also make a phone call to USAC and see if you can get that resolved before submission if you want. This is our first of the 2 charts that I mentioned. So this is our funding requests. You have a funding request chart that attaches the contract that we've already put in. It tells who the provider is, etc., and gets all of the general details here in funding request. Then there's a secondary chart that lists all the items you're asking for and how much each one is. Hopefully that will be making more sense moving forward. For category 1, it is not uncommon to have one funding request with one line. So they tend to be simple forms. Sometimes you'll see multiple lines. So I'm going to click on add a funding request. And I'm going to call it FY23 Internet Access. And maybe if you're in a multiple year contract, you could put year 2 of 3 or year 1 of 3, or you might put year 3 of 3. So if you're in a multiple year, you could do that. That's really helpful to know which year we're talking about. If it's just, if this is where we're doing transitional services for you, Amanda, I would do FY23 transitional services. First, I have to learn how to spell transitional, TRANSITI. Okay. Sometimes it helps to do things at one time. So you might say transitional services if this is you switching to the network. And Amanda, you're probably going to have one funding request for your transitional services and a whole nother funding request for that one rural school that you're connecting through a different provider. Because they're different contracts, they have different funding request lines. We'll leave this one vague and just say internet access. If this was a continuation from a previous year, if you're in multiple years and you say yes, you can enter the previous year's funding request number. You would find that on the previous year's 471. So you could enter that funding request number here. Once you do that, you can click copy FRN and enter that same number again on the left so that you can copy it forward. It'll take everything that you entered last year and bring it in for you. It takes a minute for that copy to come over, but then you're just kind of looking through the screens with us on these next few screens and confirming that the information is still the same. So if you want to go ahead and use that copy FRN easy button, you are welcome to do so. Again, you're going to put that funding request number here from last year. And then you're going to put it again on the right-hand side of the next page. It asks for the 471 or the FRN number. So you can enter that same number that you entered here and then copy, and it will fill the rest of this out for you. So in category 1, we only have data transmission and internet access. That's the only option for category 1, so that's correct. And if you've copied over, you can just kind of click along and follow along, and while we enter information as if it was a new contract. So here we're going to click on contract to enter the contract. The next example that I'll do another FRN for month to month for transitional services to show you what that looks like for those of you transitioning to the consortium. So this is a new internet contract. Contract and continue. And it says, I need to find the contract in the system for you. It already has the district number. You just click search. And I'm going to find an example contract. That'll work. Here's our practice example. You, of course, would choose the one that pertains to the current contract that you're doing or the one that you just entered on our break. And then I'm just using one from a previous year. It then says, what is the service start date? So it should be 7/1 of 2023. If that is not already populated for you, please enter it as such. So it's the start of the funding year of 23. And then when is it that your contract expires? So this is where you would enter 6/30. If it's just a 1-year contract, it would be 2024. But if it's a 3-year contract, I would do 2026. So you'd put when the whole contract expires on that line. And then once you have those dates entered, you're going to click continue. And then it says, do you have special construction, maintenance and operations, or network equipment to light your fiber? In most cases, this is no. Those items are eligible for the program. So if you get a bid back for internet and it says, hey, your internet's going to be $600 a month, but in order to get it to you, it's $20,000 to get it to you. That is called special construction charges. So bringing the internet to you could be special construction. If that's the case and you have that, you can say yes, and there's some alternate screens that you'll need to fill out. For most of you, that is no. If you find yourself in that situation, please do reach out to me individually. I want to make sure that we make the right choose the right options here on this form to enable you for the state side of the funding that would be able to leverage for that special construction for those of you who are eligible for that. So we do have a pocket of money here in the state that would help offset the cost of special construction as well. And then our narrative for our funding request. So I'm just going to say internet access. If you have the specifics, you could say 1 gigabit for all buildings. This is also a nice place when you're doing the transitional services option that you can enter in what that looks like. So we've entered in our funding request. So we've said what company we're working with. We've said what term is the contract and how long does it last. We've linked in the contract that we entered before. So we've now given them all of the documentation and paperwork. And now we need to outline what we're getting. So I'm going to click on save and add it and manage the line items. And this is the second of the 2 charts. And we can see that because it says line items in the title here. And as we create line items, they're going to have a 0.001, 0.002 kind of thing. So we're going to enter our first line item for internet access. And in my example, I'm going to say there is internet access that comes to the whole district in a lit fiber solution. We're going to do a lit fiber with a transport line between buildings, so that you can see a wide range of examples. So this is a lit fiber solution in this first line. The function says, what is it? And of course, I'm going to choose fiber because I've said it's lit fiber. If you know that you have a copper connection or a wireless connection, go ahead and choose that. There are also some weird sections here under miscellaneous that allow for installation and activation. So if it's not a special construction fee, but it's maybe like $500 to add to, get it started, you can choose that. Lots of people just add that in as a one-time charge to their lit fiber solution. And I'm hoping that you don't have crazy amounts of taxes and fees, that you're all nonprofit entities and have negotiated that out. But if you do have taxes and fees, you can also find that under miscellaneous and enter it as a different line. So you'd have your internet access, and then your taxes and fees or something underneath that. We're going to start with the fiber example. The type of connection is a little tricky. In a perfect world, this would be called lit fiber. That is what is the technical term for it is out in the field. Lit fiber not being a solution, we're going to choose Ethernet. If you choose one of these other examples, and some people might have those on previous year's forms, if you choose an OC3 or an OC24, it's going to specify what speed that internet is. Where if you choose Ethernet, which is really a kind of cable, and click save and continue, on this page, it lets you outline that speed. So in this case, I'm going to say it's a 1 gigabit connection. So 1 on the top line, gigabit for the units, and populate that down. If you are looking at a copper or cable connection for your entity, and you have a different speed for up and down, typically the download speed is the higher of the 2. So as you're filling out the, if it says 120, which is something I see for our sometimes our ROEs and smaller entities, you could put 100 megabits for the download and then do 20 megabits for the upload. Moving into a world where most of us are getting the same up and down on a fiber connection at this point. Do you have burstable bandwidth? If your contract says you have burstable bandwidth, which is the ability to take your limits off for a certain amount of time for special events and things like that, you would say yes, and then you could outline what is your maximum burstable speed. To be honest, most of our contracts do not show that in the contract, but if you ask for it, your providers are usually willing to work with you for special events. Online testing, we saw a lot of requests that were accepted. Going to click save and continue. And then this says, is this a direct connection to a single school library for NIF access? So for someone like Amanda, who's applying for just that rural school, she would say, yes, this is just for a single school. For somebody like Hudsonville, I'm going to say, no, this isn't a single school. This serves both my middle school and my high school. So it comes into the high school and then the middle school is back behind. So this internet is serving both buildings, and it is not the connection between the buildings. I'm going to enter that in next. And it does not include firewall services as part of the internet. Again, you would want to look at your contract. If it does say that, then you would want to say yes there. And now it says, what is the cost for this? So I'm going to make this real easy and say it's going to be $1,000 a month. All of that is eligible. The only time you would have an ineligible amount is if you're sharing that internet off campus. So we do have a handful of school districts that are looking into sharing their internet and off hours. So like the internet would be used during the school day at school, but after 3 o'clock, it would be shared out to a community center or an after school program that is off campus, right? So they're gonna wirelessly throw their internet somewhere else. If you do that, if you share that out past your school boundaries, you're supposed to cost allocate that. So for those districts, they would have to calculate out how much they're sharing. Maybe that's 5% or 10% of their internet, and they would have to cost allocate that. For everyone else, it should all be eligible for your internet. And again, I'm just getting one line. So this is one line to the world. It would calculate out to my $12,000. And then the one-time cost here would be 0. Again, I mentioned under miscellaneous, there's an installation that didn't used to be there. So now that it's there, if I had an installation of like, one-time charge of $500 to get it installed or whatever, I've seen people enter it here. I think now that we have the option for installation, I might break it out into a separate line. Going to click save and continue. And on the next page, it says, is this for all buildings in the district? Again, I said it clearly is for all buildings. It serves both the high school and the grade school. It confirms that on the next page. And we'll say save and continue. So for those of you who have in-city schools and a rural school, you would want to designate which buildings this is for in both of those connections. So again, this is my line on my Cat 1 internet example, and this is to the world. I'm going to add a second line for those of you who might have that. Most of you are going to have your needs met by one line, but I'm going to add a second line here that is my connection between my middle school and my high school. And that connection is just a transport line. So the options here are a connection between 2 or more entirely within the applicant's network. So I'm going to choose that one. There are a couple of other options. The next one down here is a connection back to a regional or state network. This is frequently seen in like the I-80, I-39 corridor. For those of you who use iFiber and NIUnet, your NIUnet is your internet and your iFiber is your transport in most connections. If I choose that, it does give me a warning. Oh, it didn't. If I choose that, okay, for some cases, I've seen a warning pop up and say, hey, you didn't ask for, you're asking for internet access, but you didn't ask for the transport. Like, are you sure? So in this case, I'm going to do the connection between 2 buildings. It is a lit fiber solution by the same provider, but there's a separate cost to connect my middle school to my high school. So again, that's fiber. Type of connection is Ethernet. And again, it's a 1 gigabit connection between my buildings with no burstable bandwidth. And then again, this is a direct connection to a single school. So this is for my grade school back behind my high school. And it is a connection between those buildings. And it says I can't say yes to, okay, so I guess it does serve both because it's connecting 2 buildings to each other. And it does serve a wide area network or a connection between 2 buildings. And again, I'm going to say on this one, my monthly cost is $300 to connect back that grade school to the high school. And again, I just have one of those. If I had a grade school, a middle school, and a high school, and the fee was the same for both of those buildings, I could do the 300 times 2 if I was connecting 2 buildings. So I have the availability of doing that as well. And then again, my one-time costs are going to be 0. And then this is, there's not a perfect way to do it. I could say this is just for my grade school because this is connecting just the grade school back to the high school. So I could do that if I wanted to. I can also just say, yes, it's for every entity in the district and leave it that way. But you are able to outline it and kind of describe to them your network configuration if you need to. And confirming that. I now have 2 lines. So this is my regular internet access services, new contract example. I've got one to the world and one between buildings. Maybe I've got one bill, but it's 2 direct connections to my 2 buildings and they're 2 separate lines at 2 separate dollar amounts. That's okay too. Again, a lot of times we have one line with one line item. I'm going to click on save and continue, and I'm going to bring up another example for our transitional services because I think that's good for the good of the group. We're going to click add funding request here. And I'm going to call this one transitional. And again, this is going to be a month-to-month connection. I don't really have a contract for it. So I'm going to say this is not continued from a previous year. This is just transitional services, the amount of months that I need while transitioning over to a new service, in this case, for this example, the consortium. And I'm going to say it's month-to-month services. So you're about to see on this month-to-month page the same kind of questions that we entered in our contract page. And I'm just going to make some stuff up, but we're going to say, hey, okay, for our month-to-month services, I went out and I said, I filed a 470. I did get a couple of providers that came back to play, as well as my current provider. And I've done an evaluation. I'm just going to go with my current provider. And I'm going to say, I got 3. So I did a rubric. I have that on hand, but I chose my current provider ongoing, just with those months. And then I'm going to say, yes, I filed a 470. And when I do the search, I'm going to choose the 470 from this year. I don't think I have a internet access one from this year for Hudsonville because they are actually taking advantage of the consortium. So let me use this one from 2019 because it does have internet access on it. On yours, it would be one that starts with a 23 for 23. And then again, it wants to know who is the provider. And on this one, I'm going to use Delta as my example. Shout out to the Clearwave customers. And it is Delta Communications. Let me see if I can't find that. There we go. Delta Communications LLC in Illinois. We're going to click continue. And it says, what is the service start date and when will the services end? So for those of you filing for transitional services, I'm hoping you don't have to use this at all, but I want to cover all the potential months you might have. I'm going to put the ending date in as 6/30 of 2024, I'm sorry. So I want the whole 12 months of service, just in case. They may come back to me in PIA review, or they may come back to you after you've been funded and say, hey, the consortium started charging for you on September 1st. Hey, we want to change this end date. Is that okay? That's fine. But I kind of like to give you all 12 months because at this point, you really don't know how long it's going to take to install for that new provider. And we're just doing this as a plan B. Again, it should clue them in because we've named it transitional services, that they'll understand that this is in addition to what the consortium's filing for you. Again, no super secret pricing rules. And when we use our dollar amount and get to our detailed pages, we're just going to use whatever your current bill and speed is. No special construction or extra lighting hardware. And we're going to call this transitional services, ongoing internet while moving over to state network contract. DoIT DoIT/ICN. So ICN is the internet server from the state, but they operate under the Department of Innovation and Technology, or DoIT. So again, noting for them that you're transitioning over to the state network, and you may not need all 12 of those months, but we just don't have a good idea of how long that's going to take. So then when we go to our line items for this request, we're going to click Add New Funding Request Line Item, and we're going to call this lit fiber. That is what the consortium bid out. That is what you currently have. You're going to enter in the lit fiber service that you have. And so it is fiber and Ethernet. So it looks exactly the same as our other line item details. from this point forward. So the real change was one was MTM, where the other, which is month to month, and while the other was a contract. And again, same speed and everything here. You want to enter what you currently have on your current bill, and then the current dollar amount you're paying. Again, this is not a single school. It is not a wide area network. It does not have firewall services. So however you entered this on last year's 471 is the correct way to enter it for ongoing. It's just listed as a month to month. You didn't sign a contract for that. And again, for my monthly reoccurring cost, maybe it's $1587.23. Like maybe it's very specific. That's how much my bill is. That's how much I expect it is moving forward. There's nothing here really that stops the provider from racking that up to $3,000 a month. That is part of the thing that unnerves me a little bit with transitional services. But at the very least, we can get what we're currently paying and the discount on that current amount. And again, hopefully it'll only be 1 month or less that you'll need to do it. 1 line a month, and we'll need to put our zeros over here for our one-time fees. If you reach out to your current provider and ask them for a month-to-month amount, they may have an uncontracted amount that they could provide to you. You could use that as documentation in writing if you're asked for it. In this case, I'm just going to pull a current bill and show that it's $1,500 a month on the current bill, and therefore that's how I know what it will be moving forward. And again, that's pre-discount amount.
So Mindy, here's a question then on that. So Consolidated did send me a bid for my 470 while I was waiting on, the results from the ICN.
Okay. Did that 470 bid, did it require a month, like a contract, or was it just like, this is how much it is month to month, this is how much it is?
Yeah, this is how much it is monthly for 1, 3, and 5 years, which is much cheaper than our contract that's ending here in June. So I was on the phone with him last week. Should I reach back out to him and say, can we get some of these rates for the transitional months if we need it?
You could do that. It's likely the answer is no, but you can reach out and see. I would use whatever the higher rate is, whether that is the new, whatever they gave you higher, whether that's the existing or whether that's the new. I would use whatever the higher is and just try to cover your bases. Okay. But the month-to-month rate that they gave you moving forward, from the way you just described it to me, is if you sign a 1-year contract, that will be your monthly rate.
Yeah.
If you don't sign a new contract, it's likely to stay the same that it is now, if that's a higher rate.
Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. And again, I guess it doesn't hurt to ask if you want to reach out and ask, but the answer is probably going to be no. They're probably a little bitter that they're losing you to the consortium, even though they're now getting the contract from the consortium, but still. People don't like change. So again, if I had multiple lines, et cetera, on my existing transitional service, I could do that. I'm going to click on Save and Continue and show you guys again. Here's my ongoing, my new contract. Here's my ongoing service for transition. I suppose this could be a real life example if you were signing a new contract with a new vendor even and wanted to go ahead and claim transitional services for your current service. But this one is in particular to our state network partners who want to move to the state network. At this point, we're going to click on Review Form 471 and say yes. And while I do that, note there's a calculation over here on the side that some people question. That is your after discount amount. So the total cost on that was more than what was listed there. If you're concerned about it, go ahead and click on that number and it will break it down for you and show you. In this case, that was 80%, because this is an 80% district, 80% of the total was what we saw there in that chart. Sometimes freaks people out because it's not matching up to what they just put in, because it's taking the discount already. I'm going to click on refresh. And it's ready to go and has a PDF for me. The first thing I want you to do is click on that link and you're going to download that and save a copy. So on the next page, you're about to say, hey, I am saving everything for 10 years. And so this is where you're going to save a copy of that. You can take a look at it if you want to. It does have all of the information that it gathered from the system. So it lists all the, again, district, the buildings in the district, and the discount level. It then says this is the funding request, and it lists those 2 lines. So here's the funding request information for our new contract example with line 1 and its costs, and line 2 and those costs. And then it has the second funding request. Oh, and then a total calculation for that funding request. Then it has the second funding request for transitional services. And again, the detailed information from the month to month. And then again, the line item details for that. So it does spell everything out for you. This copy itself does not have the certifications because we have not done the certifications yet. You're going to check this box here to say, yes, I'm ready to certify, and click continue to certifications. And then I'm going to walk you through these certifications. These are the same for Cat 1 and Cat 2. So if you get started on Cat 1 here and you're finished, and you start doing your Cat 2 and you finish before me, which sometimes happens, just know these certifications are the same on both pages. The first one says that, yes, I am a school under the definition of schools in Illinois. The next one says I have secured ways to use this internet access, computers, etc. It will be put into use. Here you'll see the total amount you asked for, how much E-rate is going to cover, and then how much your district is going to cover. There is a blank line here with $0. Some districts choose to put their tech budget other than E-rate. So this is the amount other than E-rate into this line. It is not required. Most people leave it blank. And then it does say this is how much money your district will be spending, which should match this total up here. If you put $20,000 in there, it's going to increase this bottom line. There are 2 pull downs here in the middle. You're going to want to say no to both of these. These say I got a kickback or monetary gift from my provider for choosing them, or they filled out my form for me. So that is not acceptable practices. So you're going to want to say no to both of those questions. And down here in the bottom, you're going to say, yes, I waited 28 days before I picked my winning bidder. Yes, I'm following all state and local laws. Yes, I know that this is for educational purposes and not my house. Yes, I know that I could be denied if I do not follow the rules. I know that my discount level is conditional on my free and reduced lunch rate. And as it goes up, I get more money back. And as it goes down, I get less money back. I will keep everything for 10 years. This is important to note because most of the requirements are 5 to 7 years, but for E-rate purposes, it is 10. Yes, I've been given permission by my district to file this. No, I am not a criminal. And yes, I realize that these are for eligible and ineligible services. And if I apply for something that's not eligible, somebody will come back and tell me so. And then lastly, no, my service provider is not paying my non-discounted share. So again, not acceptable in the program for them to give you gifts, file your forms, or pay your non-discounted share. Once you get done with all of those, you are going to click certify. I am not, because this is an example. And once you click certify, there will be a certified page. So that certified page will pop up and it will say you certified it on this date. At the very bottom of that page, there is another copy of a PDF that you might want that also has the certifications. Some people just go to that bottom copy and get that. Some people do a screenshot of that certification page so they could have a capture of the time. You should also get in an email that you certified and submitted something today. If you see some changes you need to make your form, or you're not quite done and you want to go back and add some more lines or something later, you can click on edit form and it's going to take you back to the very first page. And then you can just pan through to where you want to make those additions or changes. I'm going to leave this example in my tasks by just clicking on reports and landing page. And you can see that changed my task to have one task there. So if I'm not quite ready to submit, I can leave that in my tasks and come back in when I am ready to certify and submit. Sometimes people want to go back and kind of check some details or go through it with a bookkeeper before they submit, and that's okay. Please just don't forget to submit by March 28th. I'm going to go back to my landing page and we're going to do a 471 example for Cat 2. Again, if you only needed to do category 1 today and you're going to leave me, you will not hurt my feelings. We're going to move forward with Cat 2 and it begins to become a little bit of a choose your own adventure. So we're going to click on FCC Form 471. And I'm going to call this FY23 example Cat 2 stuff. And MIBS, and I'll explain what that is in a second. It's got a lot of people that are applying for that this year. Okay, great question in the chat.
Mindy.
Yeah. Hold
Sorry
on one
to
second,
interrupt you.
Jennifer.
Yep.
Hold on.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
So great question in the chat. You put out a 470, you asked for stuff, and then you decided you're not going to move forward with any of it this year. That's totally okay. So you don't have to file a Cat 2 471. You only have to file a 471 when you are moving forward with something. So in your example, David, if you decided to purchase one of the 5 things you asked for, you'll file a 471 for that one thing. If you decided to purchase none of them, that's fine. Just leave it. It would be a nice thing if you were to call your providers who did bid on it and say, we decided not to move forward. We'll be filing another 470 in the future, just so they aren't left hanging. Okay, Jennifer, what's your question?
I have a MIBS and stuff. Am I filing 2 separate 471 Cat 2s or is it all going to be in one?
So you can do it all on one. It's 2
Okay.
separate FRNs. And you are one of the schools that I was thinking of that has the 2. So I wanted to make sure that we had that in our example. So I'm going to do just exactly what you're doing. While you're unmuted,
Okay.
what kind of stuff are you getting? So I can do that as an example.
Just switches.
Okay.
Yeah, switches
We'll
and
cater it to you.
basic internal connections, basic maintenance of internal connections for access points and for switches, along
Okay.
with a couple of switches. Does that make sense? It's 2 different companies. MIBS is one of them, and then the stuff is coming from a different company than the MIBS is.
I'm going to see what I can do.
Okay.
So there are 3
That's why
things.
I said
that
I
you
had
can,
questions.
Okay, we'll talk through it. There are 3 things that
Yeah.
you can get in category 2: stuff, basic maintenance of stuff, and MIBS, which is a managed internal broadband services. And people get really confused about the difference between basic maintenance and MIBS. So we'll talk through that today and you can kind of figure out which one you're applying for, or maybe both. Maybe you're right. Again,
I am doing both.
okay. So yes, I am the main contact person. So we're going to put that in there as that. And then we're going to go save and continue. So again, first few screens look similar. Again, here are the 3 things you can get for category 2. To be honest, most people just get internal connections. So if you're like, wait, am I missing something? Should I be doing MIBS? Should I be doing basic maintenance? It's okay. It's eligible. Most people only apply for internal connections. Going to click on category 2. Again, they can all go on one form. But to better answer Jennifer's question, if it makes her feel better to have 1 471 for the basic maintenance, 1 471 for the internal connections, and 1 471 for the managed internal broadband service, there's nothing wrong with that. You can file as many 471s as you want. For my example, I'm going to put them all on the same just to make things a little bit easier for our example. Again, it's going to give you the district counts, the buildings within the district.
Does it make a difference if they're different companies?
You have to have a different company for each funding request. So you can put them all on the same 471, but there's different funding requests for each company.
So do I need to, so hard is who I have basic maintenance for the switches and the access points. And hard is also who I'm purchasing switches through.
Mm-hmm. Did
So
Hart give you
do I need
one
to have
contract or 2 contracts for that?
One contract. Do I need
All right.
to ask for 2?
So we're going to pretend that we're you when we do our example here, and we're going to enter in 3 funding requests. You're going to have Hart basic maintenance, you're going to have Hart stuff, and you're going to have MIBS from whoever you contracted with for that. Okay, so we're going to have 3 FRNs. Hart contract will link to 2 of them, and the other contract will link to the other.
Okay.
but it can all be on the same form. But again, if that stresses you out and you want them to be separate forms, do it your way. That's okay too.
No, this is fine. It makes sense to me to do it this way more so than breaking it up. So,
Okay. All right. So I'm going to start with our first funding request, and I'm going to do an example. I'm going to get through the basic maintenance and the MIBS first. So MIBS is Managed Internal Broadband Services. So we're going to add a funding request for MIBS. And we're going to call it MIBS. And in most cases, it's not a continuous year. This is a new contract. Sometimes it is. So you might sign a multiple year contract for your managed internal broadband services. That's okay. It would pertain just like it did for our others, and you could copy forward. But we're pretending this is a new one. And notice down here in service type, you are choosing managed internal broadband services, basic maintenance, or internal connections. Managed internal broadband services is a monthly amount that you pay to a provider to maintain your network for you. Sometimes this is in lieu of a tech director. Sometimes it's in addition to a tech director. Sometimes it's a service that you're paying for to give you a heads up if there's something breaking or going wrong. It is a monthly service. So the most of the time when I see this, this is a company that you have a contract with that comes in to maintain your stuff. And in most cases, they maintain your network and your end user devices. So you got a company that comes in and does it all for your district. You're going to want them to break that contract up for you and tell you how much of that is fixing the keyboards on the Chromebooks and how much of it is your network. The network piece is the only piece that is eligible for E-rate. So for MIBS, or Managed Internal Broadband Services, you're going to click on Continue after choosing that, and you're going to link that contract. It might not let me do it on mine because I don't know that the school district has ever applied for MIBS, but we're going to try. Going to look for a contract to see if they've ever had MIBS services. Yeah, it says down here you can't.
so for me, for example, when we did the uploading contracts, this would be, I would attach that one that I just uploaded.
Yes, you would. And so pretending that this did work, it says we can't do this because you didn't have a 470 for this type, right? So this school district didn't file a 470 for MIBS, you did. So you could enter MIBS here and then put the service start date and the end date. Maybe it's a 1-year contract, maybe it's a 3. I don't think it'll let me move forward, but I'm going to try. Oh, it did. No, it didn't let me move forward. So I'm going to go back. Don't get confused, Jennifer. I'm just going to go back a couple of screens so I can change it so I can do my example for the rest of the group. And I'm going to change this to stuff. You might say switches, you might say routers, etc. And I'm going to call it internal connections. Change that up. Oh. So your screen's going to look like mine again in a minute, Jennifer. Gotta find a contract for my example. I think I only have examples of category 2 equipment on this one. So again, the service start date is 7/1 of 2023. The ending date is 6/30 of 2024. Even if I'm buying just stuff, I want to give myself 12 months to get all of that stuff. Hopefully I can get it in the first couple of months. And then here I'm going to say switches, firewall, and access points. And then Jennifer, hopefully you have a little description here of what your MIBS looks like. And we're going to click add and manage line items. And this chart looks the same. So it is a line item chart. It's the second of the 2 charts. And we're going to add something for each one. So I believe your, yes.
Can you speak to Paul Bierman?
No, I'm doing a workshop, but I will call him when I'm done. Please take a number.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'm going to click on add a new line item. And Jennifer, you might just have one page. It's going to ask if it's leased equipment or owned equipment and how much your monthly rate is. For the rest of us who are filing for stuff, so internal connection stuff, you have lots of different connections here. So it's going to ask you what section you want it in. The trick is kind of clicking around and finding what it is you're looking for. If you are interested in cabling, obviously there's a category for cabling and connectors, but there's some things hidden. For example, your firewalls and your UPS devices are considered protection. So you're going to click on data protection and then UPS or firewall.
Mindy, I'm sorry. I was trying to catch up to you. For the type of managed service agreement, I know it's not leased, managed by a third-party service provider and purchased from them. It's not purchased through them currently. What I do, the third option, managed service contract of already installed equipment.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I was waiting for you to give me the right option because I couldn't remember the word.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was typing in my
description.
My description. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now I'm caught up.
Okay. So it should list for you. You're just going to have one screen to fill out where we're going to have multiples here. So go ahead and move forward with your funding request and then start a new one for your stuff. And we'll have plenty of time here at the end to catch you up on your stuff since I switched.
Are you talking about me?
For everybody. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
it's okay.
So get out of this current
No,
one.
you can move forward until you get back to the funding request chart.
Oh, okay. I can just save and continue. It's wanting me to do my cost. It's wanting me to do the cost calculations.
Okay, so give me a minute. Let me put an item in here and then we'll talk about it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem. So if you're looking for your firewall, it would be under data protection. If you're looking for wireless access points, it's under wireless data distribution. And if you're looking for like switches and routers, it is under data distribution. So you kind of have to think about the purpose of the item that you're asking for. I'm going to start with data distribution and switches, just to give you guys an example of what this looks like. So I'm going to pretend that I am purchasing an Aruba switch. And it's going to be model A7000. I'm just making that up. You're going to want to look at your bid and see what model number you're getting. And if there is a separate fee for installation on your bill, then you're going to say no, installation is not included in the price. If no one's coming to install it, if you're just buying it from a national company like CDW and they're going to drop ship it to you, you're installing it yourself. The answer again is no, not included in the price. But if they are installing it for you, you know that you're paying the price of the item and they are coming to install it and there's no additional fee for that, then the answer would be yes. It is not a lease. We're going to own it outright. And we're going to click Save and Continue to move to this dollar page. So hopefully Jennifer is now looking at hers for MIBS while we are looking at ours for stuff. And on the MIBS, there may be a monthly reoccurring cost. So if there's a monthly cost that you're paying to the provider, you're going to use the left-hand column. In our example, it's going to be no monthly cost because we're just buying these items. And we're going to say this switch is $1,500. All of my switch is eligible, so it's 0 on the next line. And I am buying 5 of them. It's going to take that and break it down for me. So you're going to want to use your items, how many you're getting, the cost per item and how many you're getting. And then you're going to want to choose units. And most of the time we use each. Sometimes there's feet or hours depending on installation, but most of the time we just choose each. So you're going to have, in most cases for your internal connections, zeros on the left and dollars amounts on the right. For a MIBS solution, you're going to maybe have a monthly fee here with zeros on the right. Hopefully that's not too confusing. And once you have your dollar amount entered, you're going to click Save and Continue. And it says, what building is this going into? So a few years ago, they used to figure our category 2 budgets building by building. And so this was really important to make sure you had it in the right building. Now I would just encourage you to leave it at all buildings. So then that way, if you move it from building to building here on out, if you choose a particular building, you have to notify USAC if you move it from the grade school to the high school. If you leave this selected for all, then it turns out that you can put it wherever you need to in the district. So I just like to leave it defaulted to all, but you can specify a building if you choose to. And you're going to click Save and Continue, and then it confirms that choice. And it's going to bring you back to your line item numbers. I'm going to check in with Jennifer real quick and say, Jennifer, are you back to this section after entering your monthly MIBS connection?
I am back to it. However, my second column over says type of managed service agreement instead of type
Right.
of internal connection.
Right,
Okay.
because you did MIBS. So you're going to
Yep.
want to click Save and Continue.
Okay.
And that's going to take you back to the funding request chart. I'll do mine just to show you. So this is the funding request and you have your MIBS. You're going to want to add a new funding request to do your internal connections with me. And for everyone else who's still entering your stuff, if you're back here with me, you're just going to click on the FRN number that brings us to the chart. And we're going to keep entering our stuff. So Jennifer's going to move forward, starting to enter her internal connections, and I'm going to do some more examples of where to find things. So if you have something in particular that you want to see, please drop that in the chat. I'm going to add my next item. So we did some switches. Now I'm going to enter some cabling. So I'm going to be listing here the cabling that I'm doing for my grade school. And the type of product
Mindy,
here is, yes.
You said I'm going on to basic maintenance of internal connections. Should I do that
No,
one
you're
next, or
moving
should I
on
use
to
staff?
internal connections.
Internal connections. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
No problem. We'll do basic maintenance when we're done with this.
Okay.
So you're going to go on in here for everyone else. If I wanted to do cabling, I would enter cabling. And if I don't have a make and model, which sometimes happens with a cabling product, you can always choose other, and then you can say cabling. Or you could say cabling fiber, or you could say cabling Ethernet, something that matches the bid that you received. And in most of the cabling prices, I see the things for cabling spelled out and then an install. So I'm going to say, no, it is not an install price, that's separated. And it's not a lease, I'm going to own the cabling. And again, when you get in here to this page, if you're entering products, it's going to be 0 on the monthly. And you can do each if it's like 1,000 feet of cabling for $1,000, or you can do, let's just do $500 worth of cabling for a total cost of $500 of cable. So that could be like a run through the school. Everything else that you're going to see on cabling, if it says cable, put it under cabling. If it says like raceways or face plates or any of those other kinds of things, those would be considered connectors. So you're just going to follow along with your invoice and enter each one of those things. So if you saw now face plates and connectors, you would say cabling and then choose a connector for your face plates. So you're just going to go through your list and enter your items like that. Going to do one more example here, and we're going to do a firewall because it's kind of special. So we're going to say data protection, and the type of product is firewall. And the reason that I'm doing the firewall is because in many cases, the firewall is used for protection and for filtering, and the filtering is not eligible for E-rate. So I'm going to say, no, my installation is not included in my price here, but I am going to do a sonic wall firewall. X3000. And I'm going to own it myself. So I'm putting firewall device. So again, there's no monthly charge for my firewall. I'm just buying the unit. So I'm buying one unit. And my cost for this firewall is $2,500. But underneath that, it says one-time ineligible cost. If your provider said to you, the total cost of the firewall is $2,500, but $500 of that is filtering, or 30% of that is filtering and not eligible, it's 70% eligible, but 30% not eligible. The not eligible amount comes here. So I'm going to say $500 of mine is not eligible. That is filtering that I know is not eligible. And it does the math for me. If you do not know this and you did not get it from your bid, you can still go with a 0 on the second line, but I'm warning you that in PIA review, they are likely to come back to you and say, we looked up the SKU for that item and it's 70% eligible or 68% eligible or 63% eligible. You're kind of at the mercy of USAC at that point. If you spell it out here, they'll kind of use what you have as a guide, and if you're close enough, they'll go with it. If you don't have a dollar amount here, they're going to have to go out and look it up for you, and they'll come back and tell you what it is that what your percentage of eligibility is. So I'm hoping that providers are starting to give to you a price that does have it spelled out. Also for a firewall, you can go back in here and do a license after this, and that's another pull down. So you do the firewall and then you do the firewall license. And in some companies, the device itself is entirely eligible. So all $2,500, but the license is only 60% eligible or something like that. So kind of look at your materials and what you have. If they have not broken out eligibility, leave it all together. But if they have told you part of it is ineligible, you want to go ahead and take that out up front so that you have less to haggle with PIA review.
Mindy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so for my switches that I put the amount and the monthly cost, that came out fine. But the installation, what would that fall under? Because I have to do a second FRN for that, right?
No, not necessarily. No? So the installation of your switches, was there a separate price for it?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do that as a separate line item on this. It's not a separate FRN. If it's being installed by the same company you're buying it from.
Yes, and I'm in the, I misspoke. I'm in the add a new FRN line item for it.
Okay.
I don't.
Yep. I'll show you how to do installation next. Pause for a minute because I've got a great question in the chat. Okay. Doug, is there an explanation why filtering has not been covered? So I'm going to give you the Mindy version of what I've been told explanation. So none of this is official. This is just my understanding of how it works. When the program was created in the late 90s, one of the requirements for participating in the program was that you had to filter harmful content from students. That is still a requirement. In other words, you had to have filtering. You have to certify that you have filtering. You have to be filtering. There was a concern from the FCC that if they required filtering and also made it eligible for the program, that the filtering providers would skyrocket the price of filtering because they knew they would get it paid for from this program. So that was a loophole that they wanted to close. So they required filtering, but did not make it eligible. That being said, there just was an open comment period about what more we want to see out of E-rate, in particular, what we want to see out of E-rate for cybersecurity and firewalls. In many of those comments, people said, you need to now start covering the filtering. Filtering is a basic fundamental service that you're not covering the cost for, and we want to see you cover filtering. There's also portions of firewalls that are called next generation or advanced firewall services, and they were saying overwhelmingly, we also need those covered. They're not extra bonus services anymore. They might have been in the late 90s, but now they're necessary for us to protect our networks. It's a necessary service and you should cover all of the firewall, not just a percentage. I personally believe moving forward, we will start to see those services eligible. They are not currently eligible. So if you're on the fence, Doug, of applying for firewalls and you're thinking, hey, I would like to do that in the future, but I don't want to mess with the percentages, I'm with you. Wait till next year. I think we'll likely see more stuff eligible than it was before. So if they quit carving off the little bit of amounts, I know schools that don't apply for firewall just because they don't want to mess with the percentages. If you would get all of it covered, you would move forward and do that and file your E-rate for it. It would make buying a firewall so much easier. So much easier if you didn't have to do the percentages. I agree. Great question, Doug. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move forward. Yes, this again, I want to put it anywhere, so I'm going to leave it all buildings. It actually serves both of my buildings because it's on my main connection coming in on a firewall. If I had software for that firewall, I could go and put that under firewall because that's what it's for. So I could do another line for my software, or I could choose to use license as that category. Both ways are okay. If you want to enter in the installation of that, you are going to choose from this list miscellaneous. And then the type of product is installation, activation, and initial configuration. This question on installation can go either way. Yes, it's including the price, or no, because it is actually in the installation. And then if you're installing multiple things, right? So if you have like a switch, 2 switches and a firewall and something else, I would just pick the one that costs the most. So in this case, my Sonic Wall was more than the others, so I'm going to choose Sonic Wall. If all of your products are Aruba, you could choose Aruba, whichever one it works with. And where's my Sonic Wall? There it is. And I'm going to say, and firewall, switches, and all equipment. So I'm making it really clear to my reviewer, this is the installation of all of that stuff that I just put in on my list. If this is legit, the installation for just one item, you could say, you know, whatever the item is, make and the model of that particular item number. And when you go to save and continue, it's again going to take you to this dollar amount page. Again, the monthly rates are going to be $0 because this is not a monthly charge. And the installation is going to be $750. If you knew that it was an hourly rate, so if you knew if it's priced out at like $50 an hour at 5 hours, you can do 50. And then down here, again, all of it's eligible. So 0 on the second line, and then you can do 5 hours here, which would total $250. So you can do it either an hourly or one total amount. Okay, I'm going to go back to my line items. And again, all buildings and confirming that. So as you can see here on my example, I have multiple line items of what I'm getting. All of these are internal connections. Is there anything that anyone wants to see? Please go off mute and ask, or go in the chat, or keep working on what you're working on, and you can ask me in a minute. But I'm going to leave this line item if I don't see any requests. And I'm going to say save and continue, and I'm going to hopefully be able to show you a basic maintenance of internal connections. So again, because it's a different subcategory, we've got internal connections is one subcategory, basic maintenance is another, and MIBS, which I already showed you, is the third. I'm going to add an FRN for the basic maintenance. Now, basic maintenance is a support license for a device. So if you see your switch and then a license for your switch and then a license for patches and upgrades, the patches and upgrades license is considered basic maintenance. If it does not designate that it's patches and upgrades or support or anything like that, it's likely what they call a right to use license, and that would be considered internal connections. I hate to generalize it because it's hard to see and know without looking at your invoices, but most of the time, licenses are what they say they are, right to use. It's only basic maintenance if it says it's for maintenance. Another form of maintenance would be maintenance on, like Jennifer was talking about earlier, maintenance on your switches. That could be a contract with a company, but that the bill, when they turn that into USAC, is going to look like it's going to say, this company spent 5 hours maintaining your switches on these dates at $50 an hour. So I'm going to enter a basic maintenance example. Those are the only two kinds of basic maintenance. And while we're talking about it, UPS devices, if you're getting a new battery to go in your UPS device, that's considered internal connections because you're physically getting something. Even though it's a portion of the overall unit, you're physically getting it. So you're not maintaining it. Maintenance is only hours or licenses. I hope that's clear. Happy to discuss it further. If you have questions, throw them in the chat or go off of mute. So a basic maintenance contract would look like this. Basic maintenance of internal connections. I would have a contract for that. So I would have some kind of a quote that would say, Hart's going to service, in this case, Jennifer's switches, and they're going to dedicate 10 hours to that. And then they're going to dedicate 10 more hours to her wireless access points. So we're going to find that contract. It could be the same contract that she's using to purchase her stuff. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, practice example 2. I believe that was on both things. Again, it's going to be the whole year to get these 10 hours of service for those things. Oops, 2024. And when school districts apply for bait contract for 10 hours.
Are the access points one line item and the switches another line item?
That's what I would suggest.
Okay.
If they've broken it out in your bid as 2, then I would do it 2. If they've just simply said 20 hours at X number of dollars an hour, then you can list it as 1, but it sounded like they broke it out as 2 on yours. So
they did break it. They did break it out as 2. So when it says total quantity of equipment maintained, so I put what's in their description. Okay.
Right.
Well, in their description, they said connection for 8 Aruba switches or 60 Arrowhead access points.
Okay. So 8 would be your total quantity of the switches. If you were getting basic maintenance on any of the switches in your district, you kind of want to do your math, right? You got, a switch in each lab and 1 in each wing and 3 main switches, and you can kind of add it up to a total if you don't have those specifics for anyone else.
I have them.
And then again, this is not a monthly cost. This should be an hourly cost. So you should see a one-time cost figure here.
Yes, but I don't see, so do I just put that grand total? I don't have to put anywhere where the hours are?
If they've given you an hourly cost, it didn't work out like that on here. They took away the hourly.
No, that's fine. They gave me both, so I can just fill that in.
So then you can just kind of add it up here. And in your case, Jennifer, you're going to have 2 lines. I'm going to go save and continue for both buildings and move forward so I can show what that looks like.
That's fine. I'm still with you. So
okay.
I just got to add another one here.
So Jennifer's going to show 2 lines on hers because she's got 1 basic maintenance contract for her switches and another one for her access points. So she'll have a 001 and a 002. And then when she's done entering that second one and moves forward, she's going to show 3 funding requests on hers. She's going to have 1 for the basic maintenance request with 2 lines, 1 for the stuff with whatever stuff she purchased to her internal connections, and she'll have a 3rd for MIBS, which is that managed internal broadband monthly cost contract.